the quarterback position continues to be the most important on the field. Washington general manager Martin Mayhew talked to reporters today, along with head coach Ron Rivera, about the quarterback position. Even though they've got Fitzmagic, they know, Myles, say it with me, he can be Fitztragic. So they talked about the possibility of addressing the quarterback position in the 2021 draft. Here they are.
I would say so. I think for me, especially evaluating quarterbacks, I think time spent on the job is definitely a positive. So anytime you see guys with limited time on the job, that is a concern for me with the quarterback position. And there certainly are more of those guys this year.
The quarterback position is as much as any. It's such a tough one to figure out. And obviously, I agree with what Martin said, and that is time spent. As many snaps as possible, getting as much work as you can. That helps a lot because there's a lot of tape to evaluate. You can go back as far as you want and see just the growth. That's important as well. So, yeah, to that point, yes, I agree exactly with what Martin said.
I was so committed to making the Fitztragic reference, I made my own Fitztragic mistake. I didn't set up that sound the way I should have. My apologies. They were talking about the difficulties in scouting quarterbacks in this year's draft based upon the fact that there wasn't the same quality of film from last year, particularly with Trey Lance, who played in one game in 2020 and coming from a lower level of the sport as well. That just complicates the overall evaluation process. So, look, I don't know what it means. Washington has Ryan Fitzpatrick, so it's not as obvious they're looking quarterback. I don't know who's going to be left once we get through the top 10. I don't know if Washington's even going to have a remotely plausible opportunity to try to get in position to get a Trey Lance. But you have to do the evaluations. You have to be ready for anything. The last thing you want to do is just take a guy because he's sliding. You haven't done the evaluation on him. What are you going to do? Are you going to do like your Cleveland Browns did in the not-so-great film draft day? Figure out the day of the draft, their evaluation of a quarterback that they've never even thought about taking? You can't do that. You got to know ahead of time. You got to be ready for everything. That's why they spend so much time working. They're ready for anything. They do their mock drafts so they can have every permutation figured out, Myles, of who may be there when they pick, and they know everything there is to know about all those guys who could be there when they pick.
Unless they decide that they want to trade up and they want to go get one of these quarterbacks who may be sliding, in the top 10 or whatever it happens to be. I mean, you think about, there are a couple teams there that I think they could maybe trade with, whether it's the Broncos, if they decide whatever quarterback it is at number 10 is going to be worth it for them and it's not necessarily going to be better than Drew Lock. Hey, maybe Washington goes there. Maybe Washington goes to number 7 overall with the Detroit Lions. Anything is sort of possible, but I think the interesting thing is when you're talking about guys and time spent on task, you really are only talking about Trey Lance, because everybody else who is sort of thought of as one of these top QBs in this draft has spent a good amount of time being the quarterback, unless you want to talk about Zach Wilson maybe, but then again, he's going probably number 2 overall, and I think we all know that. But I'm talking about guys like Kyle Trask, Kellen Mond. Those guys have spent plenty of time as a starting QB in college. So it's going to be interesting to see what Washington does there, because we know they have a quarterback of the present, but the quarterback of the future just isn't on the roster.
And you wonder how much they'll be stung by what happened 2 years ago with Dwayne Haskins. Does that make them hesitant to try to make a big move? Are they ready to make it work with Ryan Fitzpatrick and kick the can until next year? Look, you're going to have to give up a lot to move. You're going to have to at least be ready to part ways with your first-round pick next year on top of the one you're giving up this year. So it all depends upon how much they like a guy. And they're not going to tell us how much they like a guy. But I agree with you. Any concern about not having enough film would be an indication that they've taken a close look at Trey Lance. Here's Martin Mayhew on the possibility of drafting a quarterback and how he feels about the quarterbacks currently on the roster.
It's something that you're always looking for. If you don't have one as a GM, you're always looking for that. I don't think that process ever stops. And I think there's a lot of pressure on that position. A lot of these guys, have been very, very highly recruited, very, highly thought of, have not faced as much adversity as they face going into in NFL City and dealing with the expectations. I think that's certainly part of the process. But it's a very, very difficult position to play. I don't think that all the guys that don't make it are not good football players. I think a lot of times it has to do with the circumstances that those guys get put into. That has a lot to do with whether they succeed or fail. Again, we feel very confident with the group that we have. Like any position, if we can upgrade it, we'll try to upgrade it. But we feel confident and feel good about the group that we have right now.
And as usual, the smart general manager who ultimately says nothing at all. Keep all your options open. Ultimately be able to say, Myles, that the guy you got is the guy you wanted, whether you trade up, trade down, or stay put. The guy we get is the guy we wanted, and then we move forward putting our football team together.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.